Hi, I'm Mark Rossano, founder and CEO of C6 Capital Holdings, coming to you from Primary Vision Network. Today in the Economy Show, we're going to build off of some of the things that we talked about in the EIA segment, specifically the refining side and really demand. And we're going to break it into four parts. So today in part one, we're going to do Armenia, Azerbaijan, giving a little bit of an update on what's going on there. And we're also going to look at COVID and give a brief update now that school has started, what's happening in Europe, the US. Then we're going to follow that with a breakdown of just GDP data points, economic data points. Then we're going to go deeper into jobs and what's happening at the corporate level with bankruptcies. And then we're going to wrap up with the US-China trade in terms of where do we sit and what does that trade imbalance look like. So just jumping right in now and speaking with you about what's happening with Armenia and Azerbaijan, it's something that's always been a problem. It's really started to break down in 1988 prior to the collapse of the USSR. And then after that, there was a very bloody conflict that was then essentially stopped in 1994. So there wasn't really any part that, there wasn't any real agreement. It was just, everything just kind of stood still. So this Nagorno part, which is technically recognized as being part of Azerbaijan, is actually controlled by the Armenian military, with the key mountainous region right there that is marked with Nagorno. That is technically 90% ethnically Armenian, which is why they welcome the support of Armenia, even though they're recognized to be part of Azerbaijan. So now the conflict comes where Russia supports Armenia and actually has a base that is essentially right next to Turkey's Kars province, which is why Turkey cares so much. And then Turkey is allied with Azerbaijan because they are historically, ethnically Turkish Muslim. So that's where we get this infighting in between. Now Armenia relies on Russia and Russia support, and Azerbaijan relies on Turkey. Now Azerbaijan is a huge importer, is a throughput for the Caspian Sea for gas and oil that goes into Georgia and then into Turkey, which we'll talk about in a minute. Now, things are heating up. Turkey has technically said that they didn't shoot down an Armenian plane. They say that they do. So there's a lot of misinformation going around. Now, Russia has essentially said, guys, fix it, get it over with. We don't want to have a conflict. Turkey is a bit more aggressive on the Azerbaijan side, but when you look at the Turkish lira, where the economy sits, you look at Russia, where the economy sits, where the ruble is, there's a lot of reasons why neither of these countries want an additional proxy war, because Turkey is currently fighting Russia in some shape, way, or form in Syria, Libya, and the Mediterranean and generally, but really through Libya. So this would just be another flashpoint. Now, you may say, well, Russia and Turkey don't have any say in this. And when you look at Armenia and Azerbaijan, you have to consider generational dynamics. If there are still people in power that fought through and saw the atrocities from 1992 to 1994, and there's a lot of means to want to avoid that. Now, not to say that they're going to pull away and Armenia is going to retreat. That just won't happen. It'll just come down to another stalemate. Now, each atrocity and each impact continues to get worse than the next. So this will escalate. It's just I don't think it will escalate at this point, but this will be a flashpoint that we'll be looking at. And the reason why is because when we look at the flashpoints from July, you can see this piece right here in the northern part of Azerbaijan, Armenia. That is where the pipeline crosses over from Azer into Georgia. So this is an interesting spot because it has been a means of conflict between the two countries, especially in areas which you can see that have been shadowed, which is the Armenian occupied territory. So there's always been strife between these two countries, especially with the fact that Turkey, Armenia hosts a Russian military base that is right next to Turkey, and Turkey and Russia obviously have their issues. So when we think about, well, why do those two flashpoints matter, as they always go tit for tat, and it's always a matter of, the finger pointing in terms of who struck first, This is where those pipelines originate. So you can see that it goes from the Caspian Sea through Azer into Georgia and then cuts into Turkey, through Turkey, and then it splits off into either Greece or Bulgaria, depending on which direction it goes. And this is going to be pivotal for both natural gas and oil, specifically natural gas here. Now you might say, well, Russia is going to care and is going to flare this up because they want to stop natural gas flow that could go and compete with Russian gas. But again, it's going to come down to money and capital because proxy wars are expensive. Wars and conflicts in general are expensive. And at this point, the Turkish and Russian economy cannot support another flashpoint. So it doesn't mean that we won't continue to have conflict, because obviously anytime that there's a loss of life, it's a tragedy in its own right. But this is going to be something that we think at this point is going to remain relatively quarantined within their normal just like ethnic divide. And realistically, we think that the pipelines so far haven't and won't be impacted. So this is just something to keep an eye on, and we'll continue to be monitoring this because we're always looking at the geopolitical that may impact natural gas, oil, or have a much bigger economic impact. This one should be relatively small on the global scale. But when you look at the Turkish lira and the Russian ruble, you can see why this matters and why we think emerging markets are going to continue to get stressed, which is something that we'll talk about later on in the in the segments. So now when we turn to COVID and some of these COVID updates, I thought this was an interesting chart looking at the impact on international tourism. You know, we've talked so much about, especially in the EIA show, about the drop in jet fuel demand, the drop in just airlines overall. And this really kind of drives home how long it's really going to take for this to come back. Because not only is this a COVID issue, this is also this is discretionary income. Like, you know, how many people in America would love to go tour Europe, but, you know, are scared to because of COVID, and then may not have the capital or, you know, money at this time because it was spent on school, additional food, you know, some inflation that they didn't expect, you know, some healthcare. Again, a lot of things that are just going to pull away the discretionary capital, which will limit the amount of just that cross-border as well as that intercontinental travel.